back to Waldport City Council workshop, council meeting, March 12th. I was like, Mark. And I was like, hey. I think we were talking to Rob, so I was like, anyways, welcome everyone. Nice to see everyone here. We're going to start off with the workshop, and then there will be no public comment. But then after the workshop, we'll go into a council meeting where there is public comment. So we've left the public comment form out there to be signed if something comes up that you want to talk about. And then with that,
Mayor Lambert,
here,
Council President Dunn,
Here.
Councilor Booth,
Here.
Councilor Woodruff,
here,
Councilor Morris, here, Councilor Stevenson,
here.
Councilor Conlon.
Here.
All right, the quorum is present.
All right. So then I guess we're starting with the workshop.
So every year we go through a goal process in which you identify things that you would like the city to attempt to work on. I always use Councilor Morris as the biggest example of, coming into a goal workshop and saying, I want you to do something. And the city actually got it done, which is not always the case. And then it's Southwood Park. Everyone will have different goals. Everyone will have different ideas. Often our ideas and what we get done are opportunistic, which means that we go by fund-based goal setting. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But it really just means that we want to do everything, but the city has to be realistic in that there's only so much money to accomplish anything. And so we do what's called fund-based goals, which is we identify the funds where we have money in different places, and we try to set our goals thematically to relate to those funds. And we do it a little differently than some cities. Other cities follow this model. It's very dependent. The larger cities tend to not follow this model. The smaller cities tend to, and that'll get into right now. We use what's called the SMART technique, which is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. This, just as we're talking about goals, you want to keep that SMART acronym in mind. You want to be specific in what you want the goal to accomplish. You want it to be something measurable, something that is, a tangible result. You want it to be achievable. There are certain things that we can do, and there are certain things that we can't. I can't build another bridge across the river, for example. You want it to be realistic. We know what our financial constraints are. There are some things that are just outside of the scope of realism for a city our size. And then it's got to be something timely. There are, fantastic goals that are, 20, 30, 40 year type goals. But when you're setting a goal set up like this, it's very difficult to set kind of those 30 or 40 year plans because there will be different people in these seats 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. And there is a law in Oregon that says that a council today cannot bind a future council. In other words, a council today cannot make a decision that restricts the ability for a future council to pass a law or a rule. So, every council, every 2 years, we kind of have a little bit of a revolution now. So, a lot of other cities use what's called a capital improvement plan budgeting process. What they do is they take the capital improvement plan and they review, and we did this for the 12 years that I was on council, and the year that I was mayor, we did this. We looked at the goals based on the capital improvement and recommendations from our engineer. We would spend most of our goal sessions focused on that and very little talking about the other things that we do outside of that. The problem with that is in those 12 years, very little capital improvement projects got done. And the reason being is when you set those goals and you set the expectations and the priorities, that may not be what we have funding available for. When Representative Gomberg or when Congresswoman Val Hoyle calls and says, hey, we've got money for this, do you have something? We need to be nimble. And so the city has adopted a very different tactic. And what we do instead is we acknowledge that all of the engineer priorities are high priorities. All of them are always going to be ranked as we've got to do these, we've got to do these. And that's just the reality. When you're dealing with infrastructure, it doesn't matter whether it's the divertment pond, whether it's the water treatment plant, the pipes in the ground, or the pipes that take it back to the sewer or the sewer plant. Those are all important. If one of them is not working, all of it doesn't work. And so we go on a basically an opportunistic approach. We have a list, it's up on my wall, of all of the projects that we have, and we continually look for opportunities to get money for any of those projects. As any of that money comes up, we jump on it. A great example of that is a few years ago, David Gomberg called me and said, Dan, I need a project that will generate jobs. I've got about $2 million in this pot, but we need a project that will absolutely generate jobs for the community. And I said, I've got it, industrial sewer park expansion. It will allow us to put sewer into an industrial park that will allow for expansion up there. And within a month, the animal shelter, agreed to move those jobs and that building down to this spot. So that is the type of thing where we are opportunistic in what we get for money. So we don't spend a lot of time talking about capital improvement grants simply because that's not how it has not been successful in the past. However, since we've adopted this model in the last 5 years, we've added about $9 million worth of capital improvement projects to the city by being able to jump on each different piece of funding as it became available and focus our efforts. When we hear that 1 year sewer is going to be very important, we put in sewer projects. When we hear 1 year that water is very important, we put in water projects. That is how we have planned, and we've done fairly well. As an example, we brought in $2.4 million to completely recoat and fix our 2 million gallon tank and add a 350,000 tank for fire security. We added $1.7 million to the safe routes to schools. That is the sidewalk from Crestview Schools down to Ball Boulevard. We added $1.5 million to correct a deficiency that we were going to start getting fined for by DEQ at the wastewater plant. We added $2.2 million for the industrial park sewer. And then we were able to successfully, in a different side, shoot for a park grant when we saw an opportunity and they were talking about very specific types of parks that they wanted to fund. And we were able to get quite a bit of money for Southwood Park. Along with those things, we've also done a lot of minor projects in the capital improvement plan, including the Corona sewer expansion, allowing us to provide sewer to some of our south parts of town right on the coast. Why that's important is those are homes that septic fields are effectively draining down onto the beach. So by being able to offer sewer to those folks, we're getting a lot of the septic tanks out of there. We were able to use ARPA funds to acquire the old gym next door, and we'll probably talk about in the middle session our desires for that. We were able to get a grant to do the housing needs analysis plan with DLCD. We've done some public works shop improvements that are saving us money regularly. We've done a Lips Through paving project. I don't know if you've walked along the trail down there, but you can now actually drive out to the trail on pavement instead of what used to be a very, very rough road. We've moved and opened the new city hall as part of the grant that we got from the, it was a federal grant, I can't remember which agency. I think it was USDA, thank you. We were able to add the dog park to the Southwood Park project well after it was planned. And I think that gets almost as heavily used as the playground. It's fantastic. I don't know if you've all seen, but we've now got paving and some new furniture out there, and we soon should have some covers so you can take your dog there in the rain and actually not sit in the rain. Right when we started, we got a fiber to home agreement with Pioneer and Astound. We are one of the few cities in Oregon that we have 2 companies offering to put fiber to each individual household. And then right now, actively working on the drinking water source protection plan. This is going to give us a playbook on how we can better ensure that in the future we do not see that we are protected from spray, logging, and other activities that might affect our source water. Along with that, we just started applying for additional funds to actually start planning on how we might acquire some of that land. which some communities are very fortunate to be able to do. If we're able to do that, then we don't have to worry so much about logging, and we can let that actually be old growth. One of the advantages to that are long developed forests tend to retain a lot more water, which would ensure a more robust and healthier water supply. So instead, we do grant-based funding, or fund-based goals, which means that when we develop our goals, we look at the different funds that are in the general fund. When you think about funds, think about it like a bank account. We have different mini companies within the city. So we have the water company, we have the sewer company, we have the streets company, and we have what's called the general fund. That's the all-encompassing kind of city account. In that account, we have 6 different sub-accounts. These accounts go from the administration account, which is City Hall, to the library is another one, to public safety is another one, to planning, parks and recreation. And we used to have a couple different funds that did different pieces. We combined those back in 2001 into the Community and Economic Development Fund. So as we look through these different funds, these are where we have money. These are where pockets of money are allocated within the city. And so when we talk about certain goals, and most of the goals we talk about you have a cost of some sort, they have to be funded out of one of these funds. And so the goal of today would be to generate kind of a list of what we might want to do so that we could bring back to the budget committee and eventually to the council what some of the costs of those projects might be so that you can make an informed decision. That was something that used to bug me all the time is we all wanted something, but we were just told that we didn't know what the cost was. And then it was time to pass the budget. So we would really like to be able to bring back the cost, and then you can make a trade-off of saying, okay, yes, I would like to do this versus I'd like to do that, and you would have the cost of both in it. So the first fund, and I'm talking a lot here, so stop me if, but I'm going to try to rip through these so that you guys can start talking about what you want to do. The first fund that we have, the first little mini account, is called the administrative fund. It is City Hall. It is the staff that make up City Hall. The administration budget absorbs most of the management of city functions. And so the goals must be thematic in that regard, but they also need to be, need to keep in mind that City Hall is doing a little of everything. And so it does start to pull staff in different directions. One of the goals that we assigned last year was the management of the market. That does take some of the time from our city recorder, but it has been, an incredibly successful result of that kind of goal and that operation. And what we really want is, some easy measurable outcomes, especially in the administration department. It's a department that gets a lot of budgetary pressure. So, putting a huge onus on administration can be very challenging. But really the end thought when you start thinking about administration is, what do you want from City Hall? The city's goal really, at the end of the day, and Garrett's not here, so he can't tease me about it. I say at the end of the day too much. What you really want a city to do is keep your streets working and open and make sure that water and sewer are flowing. We do a lot more than that, and there's a lot more that we can do than that. But that is the base responsibility that we have as a city, is making sure that people can actually live here, that people can build safely, that people can have water served to them, and that people can flush the toilet and everything goes away. The next fund we talk about is planning. Planning, a few years back was a lot less staff than it is right now. We operate with 0.8 FTE, which means that we have planning 4 days a week. We generally are more available than county planning. It is responsive, and the planner also often takes on task management. But the goals in planning need to be secondary to making sure that we're serving our customers and our developers. And that's a big part of what the planning does, is we need to make sure that we're responsive to our customers and our building. So when you think of goals in that planning bucket, The project should really be geared towards how we're serving the public in a planning capacity. The next one, and this one's a little disingenuous in a way, is the library. And I say disingenuous because the library is almost kind of a separate entity. We get a lot of money from the county library system to operate it. And it is our library, it is our building, and it is our staff. But they really run their programs fairly independently from our oversight. We provide them with help and support, but they really drive their own bus. They actually have their own board. We do have an open library board position that nobody's applied for, so if anybody wants to be on the library board.
Is it two boards? Is there Friends of the Library and the Board of the Library, or is it the same board?
They are two different things. Friends of the Library is actually a third-party nonprofit that almost every library has one that then feeds into the library different resources and puts on different auxiliary programs.
And it's not related at all.
It's not related at all. The city has no authority over it whatsoever.
But then we have a library.
Then there is a library board. Both the museum and the library have a board that was incorporated when we kind of took over that function. It provides general guidance and advice to the library director. They meet once a month and talk about how things are going in the library. If there's a concern with the library board will often either write a letter or one of the board members will come and sit down in my office and say, hey, this is what's going on. For most of you who don't know, we do have a new library director. She's been working here for about a year, but Sue has officially passed the baton this last August, and Allison is the new director, and Sue has now moved away. So Allison is really flying without any backup now at this point.
So isn't there also another group called, that are trying to raise money for a new library? Is that not a separate, another third?
There is a third group. The library also has the Library Foundation, which is a fantastic group. Friends of the Library focuses more on yearly operation and library awareness and programs. The Library Foundation focuses on the fact that we have a 100-year-old building that our library is in. And it is going to take a long effort, much like Yahat's completed just a year ago. It is going to take a long effort to raise the type of capital funding to be able to qualify for some of the matches to be able to get significant funding to build a new library. A new library, by the way, is on the order of $10 million. So it's not going to be cheap. And there will be a lot of conversations on how that happens. I would love to say that it will be something that I do in my career, but the reality is that it is probably a 10 to 15 year campaign to get a new library going. I wish it was faster, and it might have been before COVID. It might have been before some of the turmoil we've seen, but it seems like funding for those type of things is harder and harder to get. Unless we have a basketball team, I don't think we're going to get quick funding anytime soon. Their budget's tied really and geared really dramatically around the service to their customers, and as it should be, and the programs that they create. So when you think about library goals, you really have to think of what would you like to see our library become, but you have to be realistic in that the library is really focused on providing the best service they can, and our goals are really kind of secondary to kind of the library operation. Public safety. We will have a new code enforcer. We're hiring them right now. We've got 5 or 6 applicants that have applied thus far. We're going to start reviewing those in mass next week. So we'll have a new code enforcer to be able to do some of that work. We do have a contract with the County Sheriff's Office that fluctuates year to year based on their staffing availability. So that keeps the budget constraints in this account, in this public safety arena a little tight. We also have a lot of complexities regarding staff, resources, and a lot of legal complexity. I'm in a knockdown dragout right now with ODOT about crossings again, because CIS put a halt to us just putting up flashing signs because ODOT said no. So now we're having to go back to the drawing board and figure out how we can do that again without having to do the whole thing all at once, which is $300,000 a crossing, which we can't afford. But when you think about goals for public safety, what you really want to think about is, what do you want to see change? What can we do better? How can we do, how can we serve our citizens better in the public safety arena? Parks and recreation. We now have this big new park. We don't really have staffing for parks. We are hiring a grounds maintenance person right now, but they're going to have a pretty hefty job in the summer. In the winter, they'll be able to do a little bit more of a project-oriented focus, but in the summer, they're going to be just running from place to place, just trying to keep everything from stopping to grow. At the end of the day, really this is one where we have a brand new park that we're just finishing up, and we might need to take a year just to see how it works, where our gaps are, where we need to put more emphasis, more time, more staff. One of the things when we get the basketball court and the pickleball courts up, we need to see how the maintenance of the courts are going to be, particularly the nets and pickleball. This is going to be new for us. We really haven't done this before. So we've got great guidance from some other cities who have given us good advice and some groups that have a lot of experience with it. But it is going to take a little bit of kind of getting to know the park, the playground, and everything else and see how it works. But when you start thinking about that, what we want to think is, what are we missing? What aspects of parks, recreation, trails, you name it, what are things that we really could be doing better or adding that are better? A great example is we have funding right now from the Isaac Waldport when they disbanded. We're going to do a nice big sign, change some signage and name of the what's always been called the Slough Trail. It is the Kittle Kaufman Trail. But we're going to have kind of a waypoint, a demarcation point. One of the grants that we're talking about applying for right now is paving and putting a better place to park in that area, because that's the real constraint. You get down there right now, there's really only 2 parking spaces. So we really like to be able to add to that. And then finally, we have the Community and Economic Development Fund. This is one of these very odd funds that is very dependent on transient rental dollars. So in years that we get a lot of transient rental income, we get a lot of money and we're flush and we can do a lot of fun things. As transient rental income declines, if we limit transient rentals or we just see a general decrease in transient rental property or usage, and we have definitely seen that in a couple of properties that have really increased their usage, this funding becomes much tighter. So when we talk about goals there, it's goals that we may not know how much funding we're going to estimate. And I always estimate low so that we don't get caught off guard. But it's a real tough one because we can get caught, as many cities did during COVID, where they have huge expenditure expectations. And then when the tourists don't show up, those go down. One of the big concerns that we have right now is we're going to see a big tourist drawback with the loss of free parking at Governor Patterson Park. That is a huge, beautiful beach that is now going to be really hard to access, and it will be very costly to figure out how we get some additional access to it that doesn't require you paying $10 a day or buying a pass. But these are still, some really great opportunities. We've done some really good things through CBD. One of the great examples is the council years ago made a commitment to do the fireworks show. The chamber support, when in 2020, I think our contributions to the chamber were on the order of about $5,000 a year. They roughly are $50,000 a year right now. And that has reaped a lot of benefits and has increased a lot of tourist traffic. We can also show that, for that $50,000, we've seen a triple in transient rental tax income from the 2019-2020 time period to the 2025 time period. So, we're getting bang for the buck without question. And then finally, though it's not funded, we talk about the intangibles. It doesn't tie to a fund, but it talks about more of a look and feel. A great example is we're going to have a new website coming on board here shortly, and with it a community transparency initiative that will be presented to you along with Jerry's workshop in April. Just like this workshop before the meeting, we'll do that in April. these these kind of intangible goals can be less measurable in some ways. You can't necessarily see some of these initiatives, but they can have, in some ways, more of an influential impact. And they can encumber not just staff, but they can also encumber elected officials and how you choose to operate, at least for your time on the council. They also have to be very sensitive to regulations and employment laws. And we have to respect the limited time, even of yourselves, of volunteers. Volunteer commitments are fantastic, and it's amazing. The fact that you folks show up here and do what you do every month for zero pay is really commendable. But we also have to respect that we can't have you guys go do everything, because you do have busy schedules and busy lives. But an example of a goal that we kind of shifted recently is we've just published a new budgetary monthly update. And this will be something that we do every month by the council meeting that will give you a clear idea on every single fund, what our budget looks like and what our expenditures are. Once we get that dialed in a little bit more, you'll be able to click on each budget line item and drill down and see a lot more detail into specifically what are we spending our money on. This will give a lot more budgetary transparency to how the city spends money, where we are, and a lot of accountability towards where these funds are, what our savings looks like, and how we're managing the different projects to ensure that we're meeting the citizens' expectations. So, as you talk about the intangibles, you think about what would make the city life better.
Another question? Sure. Is the 50,000 that we support the chambers with include the cost of fireworks or not?
No.
So it's not 70,000?
Yeah, the chamber does not have any involvement with fireworks other than they promote it. We have a budget which will be given to everyone we have a budget breakdown from the chamber. I'm actually meeting with them Monday to talk about next year's. But that is given to the budget committee and presented in the budget packet that everyone will be able to get in early April for the April 11th budget workshop. So now I get to stop talking and you get to start talking. This is about specificity. What do you actually want to do? What's measurable? What's achievable? What's realistic? And what can we do in a reasonable amount of time? This is where you can tell me what you want for goals, and I can tell you whether we can do it or not.
So I have a question about, you mentioned, for instance, planning the library. Do they have issues or things that they need or would like us to consider?
I think we do a lot of these. So if you talk to the library, their big wish is for a new roof. So we're getting bids for new roofs, so we will re-roof the library. We had a bit of a leak last year. Nothing compared to what we had at the interpretive center, but we did have a bit of a leak last year, and they would really like to have that roof replaced. So we will be re-roofing the library. The library has a reserve account. So we commit a specific amount of money to the library every year, and if the library doesn't spend it, we don't claw it back. And that's because we committed to the County Library Foundation that we would commit a certain amount of money to the library every year, irregardless. They've increased their contributions by almost 50% since I started as city manager. But because of that, we've been able to increase programs, we've been able to increase staff, and they've been able to put a little bit of money away so that when they come to me and say, hey, we need new furniture, they don't have to come hat in hand and say, oh my God, we can't afford it, can you do it? They can say, hey, we've got it in the reserves, we'd really like to do new furniture this year. As an example, we just replaced all of the public computers, the monitors and the CPUs. So now we've got much better experience for customers wanting to use the public computers. This summer, there's enough that we will re-roof the library, and that should address some of the leaking issues, and hopefully it'll look nice. But the library, if Allison were here, she could kind of talk about some of the needs there. But a lot of the goals around the library and the needs of the library are really driven by the library board. So it's kind of what direction would you like to be able to provide them when we talk about the library, for example. Planning, I don't know if Jaime's here, he's got anything he might add about what he might want in the planning department, but he usually just tells me.
That's a little bit.
Yeah, so far, he's been pretty quiet about it.
Doesn't ask for much.
Well, no, but if there's something that would enhance your abilities and.
We have some plans that are outdated, that could use some refreshing, comprehensive plan. We have some things that could be digitized, in other words, they're that paper copy, and just some more of a digital format, that post on the web, easier to access. GIS mapping, we did kind of start something, a little while ago, but then our GIS consultants up the country, and we can kind of map again. So we have a tool, but we haven't really started using it. Dan can use the assistant so that he can delegate stuff that we have obligation on. But nothing huge that I need to do my job with.
Well, I think digitizing things, especially that citizens might be interested in, would probably be a good thing to do.
One of the things that I would really like to see, and the one susceptibility that our city has, we have a lot of documents that are digitized, but if City Hall got wiped out, the biggest thing that we would lose is the property history. We have a tremendous amount of data on all of our workflows and our utility systems and everything backed up into the cloud. That's not gonna go away. It would be chaos to recreate it all, but it would not go away. But the thing that we would really lose is some of our financial records, but the biggest thing we lose is all of the property records. Because unless we digitize that, so for example, we had a question regarding Township 13 this last October, and I had staff scan the entire Township 13 record. Now, when you do that, it's very large and ungainly, and so I have it in a folder on the computer to at some point go through and put it in chronological order and make it make sense. But that's the type of thing. That's just one file of several thousand files that we have. We have over 1,500 distinct properties within the city, and each one of those properties often has a property record. I know that I've looked at mine, and I didn't think there'd be anything in it, and yet it's still, a quarter-inch thick. And I'm like, what is all this? And it's all the house plans, all the documentation from when I built the house, the property file. Some of that stuff is stored at the county, but a lot of it's here. A lot of the plans are here.
So
And
how do
digitizing.
we know what the county has and what, if we wanted to digitize it and not wanting to do it two places?
I think we would have to do it two places. I think we would have to take what we have, because sometimes the county stuff isn't right. I looked up a property the other day, and it directed me to another document. I looked up the document, and it was talking about a piece of property in eastern Lincoln County. And I'm like, okay, well, obviously somebody that fingered the number, but I have no idea how to correct that, because there's no, I asked them if they knew, and they said that these are 30-year-old documents, they don't know. By the way, that is one of the things that I applied for a rare student to do, was GIS and digitization. Not a lot of rare students want to do digitalization.
That means something that a planning, somebody who wanted to be a planner.
Something that a high school student with time and a scanner could sit down in the office and do for a summer. Yeah.
Well, I know we still have projects to finish in the park. So which, I think you said that our ideas would be related to funds. So which funds have funds and how much funds?
Well, and that's-
do they have?
And that's just it. What I don't want to do is put a tie on your ideas by telling you that you can't afford it in the fund. What I want to do is allow you to develop the ideas, and then I can give you guidance. Because if you tell me to build a park and a playground in the park, I will make it a goal. And then I will go out and start looking specifically for the funds to do it, which is exactly what we did with Southwood. If you tell me to build a bridge across the river, I'm going to tell you I can't do it. But if you tell me that we need to replace the bottom half, for example, of Waldport Heights Drive with something that would allow for pedestrian access up to the top of the hill, I can start looking at grants with ODOT to start, figuring out how we can widen that road to put some way to get a sidewalk up the hill. I don't know how, but I'm gonna keep trying.
Well, the second way out is the other.
If you tell me that it's, and this is a firm belief that I have, I believe we need a second way out of Waldport Heights. I think that is a disaster waiting to happen, whether the road at the bottom collapses or whether we just have a fire that people can't easily get away. I mean, they can get through the area, but if that road washes out or if there's a significant hazard, there's no other drivable way that's easy out of there. And I think it's very important that we create that.
I thought there was already an alternative, an emergency alternative road already. So they're just building up there without a second road.
They're just building up there without a second road.
How is that happening?
We've been along before, but
That building?
which building are you talking about?
There's like 4 new houses being built in Waldport Heights. And when I asked earlier, I was told that there was an emergency route that had been already created out the backside of Waldport Heights.
There is a easement road that goes through the national park that's there, and then out to a 40-acre parcel. But we do not have any legal access. In an emergency, you could go, but it also really requires a 4-wheel drive. An ambulance could not use that road. We need,
Walking, can't use either.
we really need a drivable emergency access that an ambulance can use. We do have a plan for that coming out of the water tank area because that is still our property. And I've been in conversations with the forestry company about potentially even donating that parcel of timberland that's up there, that we could then build the road without worry on. But there are still some easements, there are still some property issues that we need to work out. But I think that's a very important outcome for the people who live up there.
Isn't Norwood the same situation? There's only one way down.
We've almost got that solved.
Okay.
We're this close to that being solved. And when I say this close, it's literally a foot easement that just needs to eventually get paid. We have a developer who's developed out the property across at the end of Dolores. When that's done, and close to done, we will be able to connect Wedge and Dolores through there. That would allow the folks up on that area to be able to exit. There is a secondary drive down Pacific View Drive, but it's very steep. But this would give somebody a way to get out into the neighborhood if there was something happening. That's not incredibly popular, by the way. I'm trying to avoid Councilor Morris's glare.
Her too.
I'm smiling.
But it will eventually be able to provide that access. Now, these are the places, by the way, that when we get a big storm and the trees fall, we have to rush out to because people can't get out. Unless you have a big chainsaw.
Just have it, that's good. Anybody have any other questions or anything to say? I'm having a hard time with this because I don't really know what goals we've met and where we are at with the goals we've been working on.
That was my thought too, because we've done this every year and we usually get the list of, what we had. Sometimes we say, well, we're not interested in that anymore and we'd rather do this. That's give different priorities, but
So I'm trying to look in at a little bit of a different approach this year. In that often, although I looked over the last few years, and we haven't added much in 4 years. We've gotten a bunch of stuff accomplished and we've achieved some of the things that we wanted to do, but there hasn't been a lot of drive and demand to change or shift our goals in 4 years. Often, you get to the end of the goal meeting and everybody's kind of eyes are glazed over, and so they'll talk, it might be nice for this, it might be nice for that. And so what I was really hoping to encourage you all to do was come up with something, a passion project that you have, something big, something small in each of the different funds, and let's put that together. You know, and it's important. It doesn't have to be finalized today. People can email me over the next month, and then I can bring back the goals under old business, under the new potential agenda, and you can approve it then. That will still give me time over the next month to start putting numbers together for a lot of these goals. What I didn't want to do, what I was trying to avoid, is tagging some of the stuff from the past, because we tend to look at that list and say, oh, well, we've got a good list there. And what I'd like to do is kind of develop the new list and then incorporate some of that old stuff and put it back and see how much of that stuff stays on the list. How many things stay a priority? How many things have shifted or we've accomplished that we maybe think a little bit differently about? It's easy to get stuck. There's a word for it in planning, and not tiny stuff in planning. There's a word for it in strategic planning, where you kind of get stuck in it's kind of a retrospective track, if you will. You get stuck in the goals that you've had without really thinking about the goals for the future. And it's easy to start looking and kind of mining those original goals and say, oh, that's great. And, but we're not, they may not still be goals, but they look good on paper because they were there, but they may not be the interest. And so, while I would be happy to bring back kind of what we've done, and I included a little bit of what we've done in the capital stuff, and some of the major projects, one of the things I've tried to avoid is tying your hands to, well, we're still working on that goal, so let's not put anything else in there. We want to be able to include anything in that bucket, because the bucket will always be full. Whenever you put a list of anything, the bucket will be full. But, much like the old story of you take a bucket and you add a bunch of golf balls so it's full. Well, then you add a bunch of marbles. Well, you can still add marbles so it's full. Then you add a bunch of sand and it's full. And then you finally pour water in the bucket and it's full. We want you to be able to fill the bucket with as many golf balls as you want. And then we can put in the stuff that was there and show you that the bucket's still being filled and there's still room for more ideas.
So are we ever gonna get a chance to do lighted crosswalks? I mean, we fight this all the time on ODOT. I mean, it's been a goal for I don't know how many years, and they just keep fighting us.
So I'll tell you what happened. We were prepared to just put up lighted crosswalks. ODOT began. And then I sat down, unfortunately, with CIS. And CIS made it very clear that what that would result in was us losing our insurance. And their response was, why would you give up the insurance? It's ODOT's responsibility because it's ODOT's highway. Why would you take that over? And we had a conversation about it, and the end result was it would be very foolish for the city to go outside of ODOT. So I got Keith Barnes just sent me a list of everything that we can do, and I'm going to go review that list, and I'm going to be bringing you a presentation either in the April or May meeting of here's what ODOT says we can do, and here's what CIS says that if we go any farther is going to break the rules. But ODOT has made it very clear it's their highway, it's their jurisdiction. We can't go beyond it.
What about speed signs? Is that?
Oh, we've already got that approved. We're going through the process, redoing the process to get the locations solidified. But we've already got the style, the type, and the actual, we've actually got quotes for the devices themselves ready to go. We tried one with solar to see how it will work. Solar is not great, so we're trying to figure out how to get electricity to those locations. But we have everything ready to go. It's called a speed radar box, because it literally gets shipped in a box with all of the things that you need instead of having to specify. And ODOT has approved that it meets their TPM requirements.
And that's what y'all has, right, on both ends of theirs?
Yes. Yeah, our plan is 3 of them. And those will be budgeted and put in this summer.
So, since we are having issues with law enforcement, will they be able to do tickets?
The signs? No.
I also think that there was people who were hit by cars, so that really sent it to ODOT to help the city to.
That's kind of what they said about the lighted crosswalks. And that was, which is crazy. Well, if you had more people get hit, that's ridiculous.
Any volunteers?
Yeah.
So they actually have a database that you can go on. I can put it on the city website. They have a database that you can go on that shows the crash statistics, reported crash statistics at every city street, even city streets like Range and Crestline. We were able to get a funding for an arts grant a few years back to do some work there, and then ODOT cut the grant, unfortunately. But we were able to get funding through a grant because they looked at Range and Crestline, and the number of crashes on Range or on Crestline by the golf course was surprisingly high. And so they identified that as an area of special concern. Our problem is that, while we have incidents in Waldport, it's not like some other communities where there's a crash every other week. So that database just doesn't show the cluster that triggers ODOT to just jump on it and say, we're gonna prioritize this. One of the other biggest challenges is ODOT's funding has been absolutely gutted. People that I've been talking to for years at ODOT are now gone. And because of that, we are really having to, push a boulder up a hill here. We thought we had the speed sign stuff all taken care of. The last conversation I had was, okay, we're done. And then, that person's gone and I'm having to deal with this new person. Now, they've been very accommodating and we can get it done very quickly. But we had to change what we had already purchased. We had to change that, which is fine. And we just have to do it in a different way.
So I was at a training on Monday, and the speeding thing actually had come up in a school training, which is weird, but they were talking about positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. And most of the people speed because 99% of the time they don't get a ticket. So when you finally get your ticket, it's not enough to make it a big deal because you're not going to get another one. So in some other countries, instead of like the flashing, you're going too fast signs, they have the signs that you're going the right speed and you get this little thumbs up symbol. That's a positive reinforcement, but you also get a picture taken of your license plate and it goes into a drawing. And every month they pull names and they get a prize for driving the right speed.
That's really cool.
I thought it was kind of cool.
Last time somebody, and it wasn't me, last time somebody mentioned, it was about 6 or, well, God, even 10 years ago, cameras for speed in town. Just the mention of cameras, the vitriol was dramatic. I know that they're having a lot of concerns for the flock cameras that are being put in. And I know that Albany now, they just released the report of the cameras that they had installed and revenue. They will never be able to take those cameras down because the revenue that they're receiving from these cameras is so intoxicating for the city that they're never going to walk away from that. And even though the community hates it, those would be permanent. I would never encourage putting speed cameras that actually record your
But
speed.
everybody complains about the speeding,
Yeah.
so.
Other cities buy old police cars and just park them.
Y'all have to stop that. Y'all, that's what it was, yeah.
There's a pickup right now, that's on one with a skeleton in it.
Well, you kind of dummy it.
Yeah.
I don't remember why. There was a reason that Carrie said that's a bad idea.
Well,
I
I
have to
think,
go back.
everybody gets to know that that's what it is.
And it's usually the locals that are speeding some of the times. On Range and Crestline, it's not visitors who are speeding on Range and Crestline. And the last traffic study we did on Range was 95% of the traffic on Range Drive was in excess of 5 miles per hour above the speed limit. And something like, I think it was 80 or 75 was over 10 miles per hour.
Could you update us on what's happening with the lights at the school crosswalk? At the end of the sidewalk?
So we're just finishing the ODOT project right now. We need ODOT to come out and review it, which should happen either at the end of this month or early next month. Once that's done, the contractor may come out and have to grind out and do the access. Once that's completely done, we are gonna start making our changes. We don't wanna do that until, we don't wanna wrap that into the ADA stuff so that they don't, so that ODOT doesn't correct us. But once that's done, we'll be putting a lighted crossing, because we can't do a lighted crossing on our own crossings. So we will be doing a lighted crossing up to the school as well. If we can get jurisdiction, we will be doing a stop sign. If we can get the school, or if we can get the county to give us the road, we'll do a stop sign at the entry to the grade school.
So we still don't have that road from the county.
County hasn't responded much of anything yet. The last communication we had with the county that was meaningful about that was when we had to establish that we were doing the project and get the permits. And we have heard nothing from the county on that since. Then again, nobody's heard anything from the board of commissioners for months, so.
Is the contractors or public works gonna go clean up the fallen trees, or are they just gonna do the trees?
So the trees that are on the property side, we can't, those aren't actually ours. Usually when you cut down a bunch of trees, the next row of trees tends to fall down in the wind because they haven't gotten that support. I've let the property owner know, but the reality is those trees belong to that property owner, and whether he chooses to do anything with them or not is entirely up to him. I've got a list of people who have offered to harvest the trees for firewood. And I've let the property owner know, and I haven't heard anything from him.
We're not gonna put a lighted crosswalk up near, Ball and Crestline. I mean, there's a lot of traffic that crosses right there.
So at Ball and Crestline, we don't see a lot of traffic on people crossing Crestline. Now that we've got the sidewalk there, they're mostly gonna walk down that sidewalk down to Range. At some point, we might put a lighted crossing at Range and Crestline if we start to see a lot of pedestrian traffic there. But right now, that's not where the kids are going. They cut across the golf course parking lot and they cross a little bit down the street. So unless we can get the kids to actually come all the way and do a T, the lighted crossing there is not gonna be all that useful. We are going to put, those little speed bumps that you'll see. We are gonna put at the stop signs some little speed humps to make it less attractive to run the stop sign. Most people won't notice it because they're already stopping at that location anyways, so the little bump won't be an inconvenience. Because people hate speed bumps. But if you put them at a stop sign so that you're not really encumbering anything, it probably won't be as vitriol as like Newport when they put them on the back route around Highway 101. But that is our plan right now, is to address some of the stop concerns by putting those in place, and that'll happen this summer.
When we did the transportation plan back in 2016, wasn't there a discussion about a roundabout? I remember you doing.
Oh, yeah.
There are any roundabouts up there.
Yeah, well, and we talked about that, since then, that time too, but I don't know where that plan is at this point. I think it's.
That it keeps the people flowing.
Right.
And not having to stop, especially when it's school, right before school, everybody.
Yep, yep.
So there are two potential locations for a roundabout up there. One is at Range and Crestline, and one is at Crestline and Cedar. Crestline and Cedar, we've got to come up with a solution to. And I will be honest that I'm very worried that we're going to have to make Crestline one way shortly. If we do that, we're probably going to have to make Cedar one way as well, potentially. The biggest issue is it would be a significant cost because roundabouts have to be a certain size, and we don't own those properties. So we would have to buy the properties from the property owners. There are some terrain concerns, especially at Cedar and Crestline. Range and Crestline would be easier except for PUD. That PUD substation cannot move. And so once you try to put that circle anywhere else, it gets very, very difficult. We have the fencing now along the sidewalk. You can see how steep that property gets right on the other side. So I think roundabouts are fantastic in Bend. They're fantastic in Lake Oswego area. They're very hard to do here.
It seems to me the situation along the sidewalk with the tree falls is an aesthetic issue. It's ugly to drive by and
Beautiful,
see
I
those
love
things.
it. Me too, love it.
But it's also a public safety issue. Kids naturally wander off the sidewalk, especially kids. And some of that, those trees that have already come down or came down even during the building of the sidewalk are partially down. And they could come down the rest of the way at any moment. Somebody's trampling around in there. And I think it's worth us pushing harder with the property owners and seeing if we can't maybe marshal volunteers. If you have a list of people who would like to harvest the wood that's already down so that we don't have that risk any longer and really, obviously is the property owner older or far away or?
There are two. One is older and no longer lives, I believe, in the state most of the time. The other one lives periodically in the area and periodically in the valley.
Did you write to him or?
I
just
called on the phone.
You called him on the phone?
Oh, yeah.
He still didn't respond.
No, he was just that it's not a concern. So he's like, oh, we'll take a look at it next time I'm down. But from their perspective, it's not marketable timber.
You didn't say, well, what if somebody gets crushed by one of those trees because they wander off the sidewalk?
Again, you could have that same problem on almost any individual's property with a tree. It would really, we put up fences on the dangerous areas, but I barely see kids walking on the sidewalk yet, let alone walking on the other street.
It's gonna be another generation.
So for the sake of time, are we going to think about all of this?
No, I have some, there's a couple goals that I would discuss. Please. First, I would love to see the concrete and stuff get finished at the park and have the courts actually available. Bathrooms. Bathrooms, yes, bathrooms, absolutely. And then work on some funding, maybe to get the gym opening for community students.
Yeah, I think, that the gym, unless we get some kind of a massive grant, is gonna have to be done in stages. And my vision is to try to make it at least accessible and safe and get the bathrooms there so that large community events could be conducted in that space. Performances, for example, dramatic performances or musical performances or. Yeah, there's all kinds of things like that would be really good to have in there, even if the facility was not what we want it to be permanently. If it at least had a stage and tables and bathrooms, obviously. Bathrooms is the big ticket, obviously. But it seems to me that the sooner we get that done, the more value that building can have to the community. And I'd love to see that developed that way. And we can have some long-term goals too about how to proceed and what the building should be capable of. But I think, tables and chairs and I think there's already a stage there. I have never been in there.
Oh, yeah. There's a gorgeous stage, there's a gorgeous gym, the floor is a little messy, but it's still gorgeous.
Nice kitchen.
So the bathroom is really the big obstacle other than furniture.
I think there's a lot of people in the community who very much want to see that happen and have uses for it. And I think what we really need is we need somebody to I don't know if that's you or whoever does it, but I think we need definite, here's what we need, this is the first thing we need, this is how much it's gonna cost.
We're working on that right now. Actually, Mike and I were just having that conversation yesterday and today, because he's talking to the contractor who runs the open gym. And he's like, oh, well, I could come in, so we're trying to get good numbers.
Yeah.
And we're gonna put together a punch list, and then we're gonna put that punch list on the website, and we're gonna ask as many local contractors to volunteer or to help us provide low-cost bids so we can get that done. Because I want that building open, I want that building used, and I think that once we do that, everything else will become much easier. The grants will become much easier, right?
So isn't there a mold problem in there?
Not really.
Not really.
You know, there was some water infiltration that we addressed. We've got heaters running in there. We've got some interior walls to kind of repaint and cover. It smells mildewy when you go in there, but you know, any building that size and that is going to smell a little bit mildewy. The biggest concerns we have right now are we've got a couple bathrooms that we need to redo and fix. We've got ingress and egress issues. We've got to replace some doors. We've got a siding issue on part of the top area that we've got to get addressed because that's the only place that we've identified we have an active leak. And once that's done, we really just need to kind of go through and make sure that heaters are all working. There's some beautiful heaters in there. The kitchen will need to be cleaned up and kind of reopened. But it really is, the building's in a lot better shape than it was kind of portrayed. But it does need some work. It needs a couple $100,000 of contractor effort. You know, the bathrooms do not meet ADA. They've got to meet ADA. We've got to figure out the doors and the locks and everything else like that to make sure that people are safe.
Isn't there also a possibility of using, I don't know about those bathrooms, because I haven't seen a layout of the building, but that the bathrooms could be accessible from outside and be in a building rather than a freestanding?
So the bathrooms used to be accessible from outside.
Okay.
I would really love to find a way to make it so the bathrooms could either be used from outside or inside. My big concern is how do you keep somebody from getting into the bathrooms from outside from then going inside if the building's not necessarily open? One of the other big things that we have to do, and we've got a pretty tight timeline, and we have to do it, so we're going to, is we have to replace the large electrical cabinet on the outside of the building. The last quote we got was in the $50,000 range. We are looking at a much more cost-effective solution, working with one of our local electricians. But it means that we may be sacrificing some of the electrical capacity in the building for a while until we can get a grant to replace it with the full size and scale. You know, this was all built as part of a school way back in the day, and that equipment is just hard to come by. It's one of the few places in town though that has 3-phase electricity, which is, you know, very important.
I just heard from, I had somebody ask me the other day, are we ever gonna build sidewalks along range? So I'll just add that to the list of things, which I know is already there, but
As
That's a big
soon as ODOT signs off on that, I'm going to start working on the ODOT Safe Routes to Schools to get sidewalks downrange drive. That has always been a long-term goal.
Is it safe routes to schools, one of the things that can get taxed?
That's something to worry about.
I think one of my dreams just recently, this is not even a big one, it costs lots of money, and I don't even know who to say it to, but I think it would be really cool to have like a community service day in our city. I don't know what that looks like, but I just think it would be awesome.
Not only would it be awesome, it would solve a huge problem from my perspective, because I get a lot of community service groups who call me and say, hey, we'd love to do this project. I think your church is one of them that calls me regularly, and I struggle to come up with a good idea. I mean, we always have little things, but we never really have a good comprehensive. I would love guidance on good, big projects that a volunteer group could do, because I just have them go up and clean up the trails, which is
I think that's
super helpful.
fantastic.
And they like it, and it gets, the reason I like to have them do it is it gets people out on the trails, and often when they go out on the trail they've never been on, they come back.
Well, the other thing is, you know, I know that Yahats has had the thing where you take your trash, get rid of your trash, but people can come and get stuff as well. I know Dahl doesn't like doing it, but you know, maybe we could incentivize that some way, because I think it's a great thing to get rid of stuff that people don't want, but they don't necessarily want to, you know, pay $70.
You're saying not trash, you're saying that.
Well, stuff, yeah.
Treasure.
Yeah, right.
People's treasure.
I think it's the dumpsters they had there once a year.
Yeah, exactly.
They wanted to bring
So it's interesting, Constance does that to the north.
Yeah.
But I've not been able to convince it all to
Yeah.
do that. And the reason being is they have just a tremendous number of customers in town who hoard their trash and then take it to these other drop-off events. And this creates a huge challenge for them, and it creates a challenge for us. I've got probably 4 or 5 things for the new code person to do that is just simply dealing with people who've got trailers full of trash sitting in their yards and just aren't responsive until we start ticketing them. There's no way that they're gonna be taking action.
I think we did do that where if there was complaints 3 times your trash is, would strewn all over the street and they have to have it. They have to.
Yeah, that number, the 3 number is really hard because proving it's the same person 3 times has been really challenging. I've not been able to invoke it yet. The threat of it has gotten 1 person to sign up, but it would be really nice if it was a 1 strike, 2, you're out. The 3 times is just really tough. It's not providing the incentive that we kind of hoped it would.
There's so many cleanup things around town, that like maybe just has to do with your customer service day. I mean, it just frightens me to see the moss around the planters and the weeds growing between the street and the curb or whatever.
Even the kitchen in the gym, I mean, it might be that somebody voluntarily comes in and does that, and it might need professional touch-up later, but at least the heavy-duty part of it could get done now, if we had something set up for that.
It'd just be nice to see more pride in our town and how our downtown looks.
I'd love to get a
Yeah.
paint the downtown group where we just went and talked to store owners, identified store owners who would be willing to let volunteers paint their front.
Well, kind of tried something like that.
We did, we tried something else, but,
Yeah, it didn't work.
but if we did, we buy the paint and we get a group that would just volunteer to paint a few of the front fascia buildings, boy, that would be the difference. Because you can see the places that really take care of it and the places that don't.
So what's happening with what's that building, the Mercantile building? We haven't talked about the Mercantile building.
We will talk about the Mercantile building when the new code enforcer is on.
Oh,
because
there you go, all
that
right.
is something that we will have to revisit.
Top of his list.
Not top, I've got something worse for you.
Is the, adopt the plan to this program happening, or what's the
The interest in it fizzled out a bit. We need to reinvigorate it, and when we have the grounds maintenance person, that will be a great program for them to spearhead. People loved the idea until it meant that they had to do anything.
Well, I don't know, some of us do things for a long time.
Our volunteer group was great. The business response was not
Well,
as
No,
enthusiastic.
that was no help there, but I know.
The League of Oregon Cities is doing an online workshop later this month on public engagement, and I'm going to attend that and report back to the council what I learned. But I have a desire to see us develop greater level of public engagement, and a couple of the ideas that I have that may be out of left field, but I think it would be cool if we could, several times a year at least, have some type of a community-wide pop-up. And, I'm thinking about doing that in the gym, for example, or even start it here and have too many people and have to move it. That would be even better. But I think with, the churches do some of that kind of thing, and I think if we partnered with several groups, we wouldn't have to do it all. But the other thing is, and Greg and I have talked about having a town hall, in other words, an opportunity for citizens to come and informally converse with us. When we're in a formal meeting like this, we've got some boundaries and some limitations, but if a couple of us were willing at intervals during the year to meet with whoever wants to come and talk, I think that would be a good thing. And they could come and influence us or present ideas that maybe don't get presented here. So we'd like to try that out.
We'll talk more about that at the end of the meeting.
But I think reaching out to the community is something that we need to do.
Yeah.
Anything else?
So we'll get a list, I guess, and send you what we think.
Yeah, just as you go through, and I wanna, I'm addressing you because we're in this workshop, but we've got a lot of concerned citizens here. And I would hope that they would take this opportunity to send an email in and say, boy, I would love this. I can't guarantee you that you're gonna do that, but I would love to get ideas and more information that I could present to you that say, hey, citizens asked for this. There are some things we're just never gonna be able to do. Somebody asked online the other day, and it's a program, or it's something that I did personally at home about blue barrels, about rain catchments and collecting that. I think it's a great idea, and if I see a grant that allows us to go out and buy a couple hundred, gutter barrels, I'll probably try to apply for it and see if it's something that can be done. I will tell you, I had a horrible, horrible experience with mine, but that's apparently because I did not realize how much rain comes off our roof. But I think that there are a lot of opportunities like that I would never have thought of doing at a community level. But when I saw that posting online, I just made a mental note. If I see a grant for Blue Barrel or rain catchment systems, maybe just take the effort, send in. Often some of these grants have a very low threshold of application. They just want to see that people are interested.
Anything else? Very good. How about you? I don't have, you guys have said everything that I was, but I just wanna go to the mouth in the park. When I did my first workshop, I don't know how many years ago, 5 years ago, my goal was to have food trucks. Now that just seems like a food. All right, well then I'm gonna close the meeting if everyone's okay with that. All right, so I'm gonna close the workshop. I'm gonna invite the public to go ahead and sign up for public comment.